all this.
Don't know, we're gonna have to figure that out. Connected, Derek, to the USB audio device.
It's Michael says it is connected to the USB audio device. Okay, the only microphones available are microphone array Realtek and same as his system microphone array.
No, it's fine with me. Do we have people, you think?
We have people, they can't hear the audio still.
Michael,
Yeah.
you said they're getting audio now.
You're hearing it.
They're hearing it, they said.
We can hear you. What did you do?
Okay, sorry about this, folks. That's okay.
All right, 1 second, sorry.
All right, so I was mentioning the Rusty Patch Bumblebee has host plants just like the monarch does. So I talked to the group in the room a little bit about that, and that their host plants are you know, very common plants for people's native gardens. This is the earlier you know, native range of the Rusty Patch Bumblebee, and it's now basically in these little areas sparsely distributed. So we're trying to encourage planting its host plants, and those there's a list in the back, but I'm happy to share on email the host plants of the Rusty Patch Bumblebee. Oh, Bell Bowl Prairie is a prairie out near Rockford that is Rusty Patch Bumblebees have been found at the Bell Bowl Prairie, but it's undergoing construction possibly in October, actually, to wipe out a whole bunch of the Bell Bowl Prairie. So that's if you go to Save Bell Bowl Prairie online, you can see all about that. There's been lots of discussion, and Dick Durbin and Senator Durbin and Duckworth are both very aware of this, and we're still writing letters to them and encouraging them to protect it. But she's on the Federal Aviation Administration Committee, so she could push a little bit more, possibly. So anyway, so why leave the leaves? One of the action items I had was to leave the leaves. Well, you know, people think, well, I'm going to mulch up the leaves because that's, you know, good for the nutrients of the trees and things, and it is good for nutrients of the trees. But what you lose when you mulch up leaves is, for example, fireflies spend 2 years in the debris that's in your garden. They emerge and fly for about 6 weeks. Ladybugs live in your debris. I mean, they basically, they're not leaving. Most of monarchs are unusual in that they migrate to Mexico. Most insects overwinter in your backyard. They, you know, some insects like spiders, their blood, basically their liquids turn to like an ethanol, and they're essentially like antifreeze over wintering. So these are some of the insects, the critters that are in your leaves. Bumblebees, they burrow often using mouse holes or things like that, but they'll burrow in, and the queen will nest over winter, and when spring comes, she will start to gather nectar and lay eggs. Same with the miner bee. This is the woolly bear caterpillar, which you maybe recognize as an autumn bug. And this is what it looks like in adult form. And it is basically a caterpillar that's living in your backyard until it emerges in springtime and turns into an Isabella moth. We're not saying to just leave leaves wherever they fall. I do want to mention, you know, if you have lawn, you need to get the leaves off the lawn. If you have walkways, you probably want to get them off the walkways so they're not too slick. But you can put them under shrubs and trees and in your pollinator gardens. I mean, honestly, I even go into the alley and pull up extra leaves and bring them into my garden. So, and I have a small backyard. I don't have some kind of giant backyard. So, I mean, they do deteriorate. People are like, well, it'll take a long time for my oak leaves to deteriorate. They do take a long time, but They do deteriorate, they do flatten out as they get wet. And the fact that they actually endure is some of their wildlife value, because then the debris is what birds can hunt around for insects in, and it also provides cover for insects as well. I want to mention plant stalks as well, because you can imagine, here's the Luna moth. This is one of our most fantastical North American moths. It's like 4 or 5 inches wide. It has a variety of plants are its host plant, including sassafras and some others. But this is its cocoon, basically, or its chrysalis. I'm losing my words, chrysalis. And it essentially looks like leaves. It's basically like a wrapped leaf. So no way, if this falls off a stick, would anyone notice this in their yard. I just want to highlight that. Same thing with the giant swallowtail. If this has fallen off from this little bit of spit that's holding it on there, it would not be visible. And there's no way anyone can say, oh, be careful. I'll just be careful. No, you can't do that. And when you mulch, you are chopping up whatever adult insects are in there, eggs that are in there, any chrysalis that's in there. This is our native praying mantis. This is not the praying mantis that is sold as garden protectors. The Chinese praying mantis is mostly sold and is quite large and is decimating native praying mantis populations. But you can see its egg sac is barely an enlargement on a stick. Again, nothing that you would notice if you throw away your sticks. So what I'm recommending in terms of plant stalks, if you need to, I basically leave my plant stalks, but if you need to take off your plant stalks, rip them. I mean, usually I would say rip them when they're kind of brittle. And I'm suggesting that rather than cutting, because you can cut up larvae that's inside plant stalks. Bees also will climb inside of plant stalks. So you just put them under a shrub or a tree or whatever, to stack them in a semi-dry place. So, and this is a gall. In the center here is inside this goldenrod, enlarged goldenrod area is a little fly. Pesticides, I just want to highlight neonicotinoids. It all makes sense to probably most people that you need to avoid pesticides. But neonicotinoids are the most common pesticides sold in the United States, and they basically Bayer and Ortho are common providers. Neonicotinoids are a systemic pesticide, so that whatever part of the plant is treated with neonicotinoids, whether a little bit is sprayed on a leaf or whether it's a soil drench in the roots, it will transform the whole plant, will be toxic. And further, it persists, so that a woody plant will stay toxic for like 6 years. And so, and in fact, in addition to that, the neonicotinoid that is in the plant, it can actually poison nearby other plants. So neonicotinoids are something to avoid. I can provide, well, actually at the end of this slideshow, I have information on where to find the list of products. It's a very long list, though. They're very common. And in fact, it's very common for nurseries to treat your plants with neonicotinoids. It's one reason that I would personally, I avoid cultivars of native plants, because there are so many treated with neonicotinoids. In fact, in Evanston, oh, I shouldn't touch the microphone, these poor people. In Evanston, Natural Habitat Evanston was buying 31 elms, American elms that are resistant to Dutch elm disease. And when we were buying them, I said, well, the only thing is we want to be sure they're not treated with neonicotinoids. And I made the city check, and they were to be treated with neonicotinoids. And the city forester was like, I'm very surprised that they would spend the money to do a soil drench on everything that's leaving their nursery. That was their plan. And so he wasn't even going to check. Well, the nursery was able to remove the Evanston elms from the soil drench so that they got it without the neonicotinoids applied. And maybe other nurseries will do that sort of thing. So this is my almost my last slide. So this is how you do it. Let's get started. This is my front yard. First, I start with collected cardboard. This is called cardboard lasagna. And in April, I put down the cardboard, pulled off as much of the tape as I could, covered it with compost and mulch. I seeded it with buffalo grass right when it was in this state. I seeded cone flowers over here. And then 4 months later, April to August, it looked like this. And this is basically what it looks like now. So the cone flowers were coming up and the buffalo grass was doing its thing. Ways to amplify, many people are, they don't have a backyard. I don't know what everyone's situation is here. If you have an apartment building, see if they'll plant an oak or see if they'll plant goldenrods. There are some goldenrods that are not the aggressive, crazy goldenrods. You can plant zigzag goldenrod or blue stem goldenrod or a lot more modest sized goldenrods. Ask the apartment building or your school or your place of worship or whatever if they can leave their leaves. Asking vendors at, whether they have bird strikes, or asking vendors about asking vendors about neonicotinoids on plants that they're purchasing, or ask it like, if you go to Chalet, or if you go to, we have talked to most of the nurseries at least around Evanston, including Chalet. Ask janitorial staff where birds hit so that you can figure out what windows need treatment. So they're also doing a native plant sale or doing a sustainable yard tour, all good options for, local action. So that's the end of it. And then at the end of this presentation, I have resources so that you can, keep me honest, look and see whether I've misstated anything. And this is my email address. I'm happy to talk to people. And at any time. So sorry, that went a little bit longer than I would have thought, but I'm happy to answer questions or whatever. Should I stop the share? Maybe I won't stop the share yet. Well, maybe I should. Stop the share. Okay. Yes, you were gonna. I should have done that in context. I mean, Glenview is why when Evanston did it. I mean, I am really grateful to you for, bringing this up and initiating. What I think the best part of No Moment, I mean, I got a lot of, discussion about whether, there are going to be so many dandelions, everyone's going to pull out the Roundup, it's going to be worse, you're making the bad choice. I think the best part of the whole thing was getting people to rethink what lawns look like. Love it, hate it, didn't matter. You can hate No Mow and you can be like, well, do lawns really make that much sense? I mean, do I want to mow? I mean, I think young people in particular, they're kind of like, why do we have to do it that way? So I think really, the best part of No Mow to me was the public discussion about it. And then the city of Evanston, I was really surprised. The city of Evanston felt very challenged by this. The city of Evanston was, well, I don't know if we can do what Glenview did. Maybe we, I think that the perception was they had to do No Mow in like all their parks or none of their parks. They didn't do it in any of their parks, but I don't think that they have to do it in all of their parks to support No Mow They can support, homeowners doing it. They could do a demonstration garden in a piece of a, public park area and say, here's a No Mow area. Look at this. I mean, it's a very flexible, easy thing. And the other thing I said to everyone is, what? Life is too short. Stress is too big. Nobody should stress. We should find joy in our lawns and joy in our gardens. And if it's stressing you out to do No Mow mow, because it's not like, your feet are to the fire on this, make your own judgment about what you're doing. But I really do think that in looking at, everyone, looking at the lawns and looking at the gardens, I think it was really, really valuable. So we'll see what happens in May, see what the city tells us.
I have a request from home that if you could repeat the question, they can't hear the question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so I should have remembered that.
Yeah, no
So the
problem.
question was talk a little bit about No Mow because Glenview initiated, of course, No Mow here in this area. I guess Appleton, Wisconsin was a first starter too, but yeah. Yes.
Second of all, as far as the leaves and raking them into your gardens and under your bushes helps you insulate the roots and protects the roots from frigid weather.
Right. One of the comments we had was leave the leaves, you know, sweeping the leaves. I would say raking or sweeping the leaves under your plants. Just insulates the roots and the ground and actually provides a little more insulation to both insects and your plants. So yeah, I mean, agree.
Will these slides be made available to us?
Fine with me. They're downloaded on the site here. So yes, you can totally look at them. Yes, ma'am.
So what I'm bringing, what is on your checklist right now?
The question was, what is on my checklist for the garden and in the fall? Well, I will sweep the leaves off of. I have also. I actually have a country house too, and we have a gutter where I will flood my neighbor if I don't get them out of the gutter. So we have to get the leaves, you know, into the flower beds. Apart from that, what I'm really doing is trying to rescue oaks and get oaks planted, to be honest, because we often get calls from people asking that they dig up an oak and try to give it away to a school. And so I have a bunch of those in my yard right now. So that's my big thing, is getting all these oaks distributed. But apart from that, I mean, I'm not going to do too much for my garden. I mean, my garden is kind of, you know, and I'm not, you know, the leaves are fine on buffalo grass. I mean, on native grasses are basically used to leaves, as far as I can tell. They kind of flop over in clumps, and the leaves fall between the clumps, and I think they just deteriorate. And so I'm not worried too much of anything about leaving the leaves, other than the front sidewalk that people walk on, you know, and then the drainage. Yes, ma'am.
So you planted buffalo grass.
I did.
Does buffalo grass ever get mowed at all?
So the question is whether buffalo grass ever gets mowed. I mean, my answer is no. I mean, it basically is 4 to 6 inches tall. It sends up a little eyebrow seed head, you know, periodically in, well, what time of year? I think in like July, but that's fine. I mean, you know, that's completely unobtrusive. And as that flops over, I think it's about 6 inches at most, you know. So I think it's basically fine. The issues with buffalo grass, though, and to be frank about this, it doesn't green, you know, non-native grasses green up fast. I'll be there in May and my grass will look, you know, yellow and dead. It doesn't green up until it gets to be basically 50 degrees. So, yeah, and everyone else's cold weather grasses, I mean, they'll all be green and lush looking in early spring. And then come this time of year, it starts to look like, I mean, it doesn't look like winter, but it looks like it's past its season, you know, but it's still somewhat green, but it's, you know, it's going dormant. So that's the main issue with buffalo grass. Other than that, it picked up, you saw in 4 months, it was growing. It was pretty easy to do by seed. I didn't do any plugs. So it was okay. Yes, ma'am.
How can we go and we started on joy and all those plants? Just leave them out and clean them in spring?
Yes, for sure. So yeah, autumn joy is a non-native, but yes, all these plants, you can leave them and just in fact, I mean, I think the seed heads are pretty. Autumn joy has perfectly acceptable winter, you know, it's like a rust color, perfectly acceptable, you know, bloom. I think turtlehead is a beautiful winter bloom. It looks like a little jewel box, you know, of folded, you know, snapdragon sort of heads. No, we do nothing. Yes, we do nothing. Yes, sir. Sorry. The question was what do we clean up this time of year? Oh, is that what I forgot?
I have a question, Shad.
Yes.
What is wrong with Pachysandra? I never need to even water mine, much less fertilize. It's very, very low maintenance, as in 0. So what is wrong with Pachysandra?
What is wrong with Pachysandra? It's very low maintenance, no watering. So I would look at it kind of like the non-native no-mow grass. There are benefits to having a no-mow yard, even if they're not natives. I mean, the benefits are no pesticides, no mowing, no watering, all of that. that what you're losing is a native plant that feeds native insects. There is a native Pachysandra, by the way, which is indistinguishable, but also never available that I've seen. But there is a native Pachysandra. The question is to look at how many insects are actually supported by the Pachysandra. And the problem is there are very few studies of cultivars and non-natives and what insects they could possibly support, and because it's basically an Asian plant, so it was co-evolved with Asian insects. So there may be, you know, insects that it supports, but they're probably non-native invasive insects that happen to be here. Maybe there's some native insects that can eat Pachysandra, but honestly, you don't see Pachysandra get eaten too much either. So I don't think there are a lot of native insects eating it, but that's just my anecdotal. I'm not I haven't done a research on native insects and Pachysandra, but I think what you're losing is all of that space that could be forage for native insects. And you could do that with wild ginger, strawberry. There are lots of plants that do grow as ground cover and shade that you can do it with. Pennsylvania sedge. Sedges are good for skippers, butterflies that are skippers. They look like little jet engines, like with 4 wings. They rely on sedges for the most part, and also like a little blue stem grass and other things like that. So, yes, ma'am. Yeah, so it's a carrot. It's a wild carrot. So the question is, what's the value of Queen Anne's lace? It's a non-native. But it is close to dills and carrots, and you will find black swallow caterpillars on your Queen Anne's lace. So there are some insects where it's close enough, or native insects that it's close enough to some native, carrots and dills and things like that, that it can eat that. The same is true for vegetable parsley, vegetable dills. You can see black eye, that's a non-native plant, but black swallowtail definitely eat those plants. So there are certain, I'm not saying that every cultivar or every non-native is horrible. It's just that there's very little research on whether this provides any value for, and a lot of it is sort of anecdotal. Well, I've seen black swallowtails on Queen Anne's lace. So it depends, yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, it's like a priority of evils. Is Queen Anne's lace the first thing you're going to pull, or are you going to work on, these other 5 things first? Lesser celandine is terrible. That's a whole nother conversation about invasives and things. So, there are lots of things to be thinking about maybe before you go for Queen Anne's lace, but yeah. Anything else in the chat to?
Sure, someone's asked, how can you prevent birds from getting windows?
So ways to prevent birds from hitting windows for homes, the thing to do is you can use the simplest thing is a ceramic pen. You can use a ceramic pen. I wonder if I just have this. I do have this on my screen, so I can show it to you. Except I have to figure out how to move this. No, sorry. Let's see if I can do this. Sorry, one second. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this person, this is he's just using this white ceramic pen, and he's drawing lines that are about 2 inches apart. So you can do that on your screen, and then you can see that from the inside, it really doesn't look that terrible. Some people are like, oh no, but I'm going to see lines all the time. I would say I have all different solutions on different windows in my house. In my kitchen, this is what I have looking out. And I would say, you become blind to this pretty quickly. The other thing I've done is I have acopium blinds. It's basically like paracord. It's cords hanging out across the, in the front of my house. And that you would think is really disturbing. But I got to say, it moves with the wind, and the birds realize there's a plane there. They realize there's something there. So that also is something that becomes, really unobtrusive after you've lived with it for a bit. So those are 2 common things. The other things you can do are you can have kids can draw. If you have a bad window, then you can release kids on a bad window. You don't necessarily want to have it on your front, huge picture window or something like that. But if you have a bad window, then kids can do temperate paint. I have lots of solutions on this. I'm happy to do share things offline or separately about that. But there are lots of choices. The other thing is obviously you can also buy store-bought solutions from Feather Friendly and from Kaleidoscape. They both do dots. Did I answer that? What was the problem? The question was, what was the problem with how to solve birds crashing into windows? Sorry about that, folks. So the other solutions online you can buy from Feather Friendly or Kaleidoscape dots. And the dots basically are 2 to 4 inches apart so the birds can see them. The Kaleidoscape ones are clear. So honestly, something's there, but it isn't very obtrusive to see, clear dots on your window. So anyway, there are lots of solutions and we can show you. Oftentimes I even bring in, I have a piece of plexiglass with all these solutions on it, so that I can just show people what it's like and they can look through on both sides. So yeah, there are lots of solutions. Yes, sir. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, madam. Yes.
Do you use mason bee houses?
I have mason. The question is, do I use mason bee houses to increase populations? I do have some mason bee houses, but honestly, I don't really use them. They've never had been moved into. Where I have seen them moved into, the woodpeckers just go there to eat them all clean. So there's that. And then the third thing is you really have to clean them out. The tubes have to be changed because they tend to get fungus that will kill the larva in there. So I do have some up, but I basically I'm not trying to. I'm letting those become compost. So that's where I am with the mason bee houses. But leaving debris is creating, native bee, space basically, or leaving space for mason bees. Yeah. Yes, sir.
More questions from the chat. What's the scoop with Trailing Charlie, which has taken over most of my backyard former lawn?
Scoop with Creeping Charlie. Creeping Charlie is we're never going to get rid of Creeping Charlie. It is a non-native. I've done a lot of trying to remove it from forest preserves and parks and things like that. It is just insidious and it's going to continue to be there. Basically, you can try to knock it back. And sometimes if you've got a thick enough roll of it, you can kind of just roll it back like a carpet across your, your ground area. But honestly, it's extremely difficult because the roots will break off and it will come back just as strong. So, that's in my front yard, that's the other ground cover I've got. I'm always fighting Creeping Charlie. So I was recommended to me that I try planting wild strawberry, I've only done this last spring. I put in wild strawberry. I have to report back if that's useful or not. Most likely I'll get wild strawberry and Creeping Charlie because I can't imagine I'm going to get rid of it. It's not going to get rid of Creeping Charlie, but maybe it'll compete a little bit with Creeping Charlie. So yeah. Other question. Yes.
Yes. So I think maybe you answered this, but should we continue to pull weeds in the fall? I have gout weeds.
So the question is whether to continue to pull weeds like gout weed. I continue to pull non-native weeds. And in fact, the other thing is, honestly, there's some native plants that if they overrun your garden, you're still, I have to be an ambassador for native plants. So if I'm all Canada goldenrod and common milkweed, I'm nobody's friend, honestly. So I think even managing even natives, it kind of pains me to take out a common milkweed, but they are rampant. And there are great milkweeds that are not as crazy. World milkweed is a 2-foot tall milkweed. Spider milkweed is also short. Butterfly weed is also, 3 feet tall, basically. So there are lots of small ones, and then rose milkweed is a well-behaved milkweed. Some of the seeds are in the back. Also a tall one. That's a tall one though. So yes, I mean, I would say prioritize. Goutweed is a bad one, and I have that from my neighbor's house too. So I'm sympathetic to that person who has the goutweed. I would say try to take those out. And I mean, the other thing is, I was just talking with somebody about vinca, or can't say the other name, myrtle. Myrtle is the other name. So periodically I pull out the time to get the vinca out is first thing in spring. You'll see it coming up, and it's easier to remove it then than now. So yeah, I mean, I guess, if you've got some real horror that you're dealing with, knowing what its lifestyle is and when the easiest time is to remove it is, I'm not sure whether the goutweed is better to try to tackle in fall or in spring, but I don't know if that answered that, but yeah. Yes, ma'am. Thoughts about eradicating buckthorn. Okay, so buckthorn is a woody, very aggressive. In fact, really disturbingly, the Chicago Regional Trees Initiative did an analysis of the most common trees in the Chicago area, and buckthorn is the winner. So it's a non-native tree, and its name is Rus cathartica because it causes diarrhea in birds. It can actually kill birds that are relying on this. They will eat the berries of the birds of the buckwheat, and they will disperse it throughout. But you'll also see that they, it makes them ill. So buckthorn, we're constantly fighting buckthorn. Some small ones you can completely pull up the whole plant, but if they are big, I mean, the other thing is people don't realize they have, including me, people don't realize that they have buckthorn in their homes or around their homes, and even a tree that had been in our yard when we bought the house. It was a 7-inch thick trunk was a buckthorn that I hadn't realized that was buckthorn. So to be honest, I think if you have buckthorn, the only way to get rid of a big tree is to cut it and then to paint it with garland. Because if you don't paint it with garland, it's going to send up sprays everywhere. Yes, ma'am. Garland, where do you get garland? Well, I would mail order garland. Basically, I go online to different, there are a lot of sort of environmental online stores that will sell garland. So, yeah, that's an example of, pesticides, but sometimes I feel like there's no other solution to it. Yes, sir, Mike.
Wondering if there are any recommended lawn landscaping companies locally. I know there are a few in Evanston that say they're eco-friendly, but hard to really evaluate as a novice.
Yeah, I always hesitate to recommend particular, companies. But there are companies that are really focused on purely native, and I would say Shady Grove Wildflower Farm, Allison Sloan is doing purely natives, and Julia Bunn, Spirited Gardener, is doing purely natives. Red Stem Landscaping, Monica Buckley and Rogers Park does natives. So there are certain companies that are doing this. That's not a complete list, and but those are some companies that are really focused on it. Anything else? Yes, sir.
These lawn landscaping companies that say they use an iron solution, which is a much more natural herbicide, less harmful to the environment. Are they correct in that?
I've asked about landscaping companies that use an iron solution and whether it's more gentle to the environment. I have no idea. I would be purely speculating. I don't really know about the iron solution or what they're doing. So, I mean, I really have not found that with native plants, you need to use, fertilizer or, different sorts of herbicide or pesticides of some sort. So I'm just kind of not doing anything. And if that, You know, if something doesn't survive there because of that, okay, you know, I'm all right with that, you know, I think, personally, I sometimes have a slide on here that is, we just have to be willing to accept a different look in your gardens, and accepting a little bit of insect damage. Usually it doesn't kill the plant, you know, just allowing there to be insect damage. I'm assuming that the iron is for fertilizer. Herbicide. No, I don't know about it at all. Don't know about it at all. Sorry. No. Does that sense? That about it?
Anybody else?
Yes, Hank.
Hi, I'm sorry, this might have been said, I couldn't get here earlier, but there is a session at the Grove this Saturday, the 22nd, on invasive plants and managing them. The Meredith Swanka is going to, which is really good.
Okay, so there is a presentation at the Grove on Saturday
Yeah, I think it's at 2 o'clock. People should look it up.
at 2 o'clock on invasive plants. So, yeah, who's the center there?
She is the ecologist property, the natural areas of the Grove. Her name is
It's actually by the person who manages the native areas of the Grove. Yeah.
I have 2 more questions, and then I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so we can wrap up. Thank you, Leslie. Have you used vinegar to kill dandelions? Does it harm birds or bugs?
Dandelions, does it hurt bees or bugs? Birds or bugs? I have used vinegar. I have found that you have to reapply all the time, and I'm probably acidifying my ground. So I have not found it super helpful. I used horticultural vinegar, which is even like 30%, so it's even a high test vinegar. Most vinegars are 5% acid. So even using the high test vinegar, I think you have to keep on it all the time. And I don't think I'm ultimately doing a favor to the ground. But, you know, dandelions, dandelions I would pull, to be honest. I would just try pulling dandelions. Maybe you have too many dandelions. You know, it probably isn't that, you know, horrible, you know, but I do think if you're reapplying it all the time, then think about how much you're applying to your ground. So we're told that dandelions need a calcium depleted soil, and they bring up calcium. They need, or they can't live in it. They can't live in a calcium depleted soil, and they bring up calcium from the soil as they bloom. So if you let them keep going, they deplete their own growth habitat. I don't know about that. I personally, I have a pet rabbit, and I give my dandelions to my rabbit, and I don't have that many dandelions left. So I probably also have a lot of wild rabbits. But you know, anyway, yes, Mike, you have another thing.
I do from the chat. What happens to all the leaves and yard waste that is picked up by streets and sanitation landscaping companies? Is there a more sustainable way to compost that yard waste?
So I don't know what happens in Glenview. I only know in Evanston, and in Evanston, it's taken 50 miles away, and at a cost about $200,000 per year to trek it outside of Evanston for composting. So that's, you know, to me, it's a waste of money and fuel and a whole bunch of things. But that's what happens in Evanston. In Evanston, they do chop up the trees, and the trees are available for compost. And sometimes they have the leaf mulch also from the trees in Evanston that you can pick it up from municipal areas. So that's at James Park, by the way, if you're interested and you want to come look at that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So sound on the first half of this.
Me too. My apologies for this. Thank you all. Thanks, everyone.